I didn't play golf very long, and there was more than one reason for that. First of all, when I started playing, I discovered I wasn't very good at it. And it didn't take me much longer to figure out I wasn't going to get any better at it. But there was something else that bothered me a lot. I never liked playing with good golfers. It was just too embarrassing. I didn't mind playing golf with a few of my friends who I knew were no better than I was. And that was okay to play with them because we were all equally bad. If you're a bad golfer, you might do one of the things that my friends and I did. It was called do-overs. And if your tee shot went this way or that way, all you had to do was say, I want a do-over. And hopefully the second effort would be better than the first. Can't say it always was, but that was the hope. I wonder how many people there are who wish that life had do-overs. One man reportedly stated with some degree of pride, I can't think of a thing I would change in my past life. I don't mean to be rude or caustic, but I'm afraid that man didn't think long enough or hard enough about his life. Because I believe that most people could easily think of a few things, or maybe a lot of things, in their lives that involved mistakes that brought some degree of regret. You recall when Joseph brought his father Jacob to meet Pharaoh for the first time in Egypt. Jacob sounded somewhat regretful. His exact words were, few and evil have been the days of the years of my life. I don't know about the few part. Jacob was 130 when he said that, and not many people who are 130 have much right to complain. But I can say that the evil part was right. And you think maybe that Jacob would have changed something in his life if he could have. Like not stealing his brother's birthright, or like not deceiving his father so that he could secure the blessing that wasn't his. Now, you're smart people, and I know what you're thinking. Where is this going? Well, if my lesson had a title, it would be, If I Could Start Over. And there are 4 clarifications I want to make before I get to that lesson. First, I know you can't undo the past. You can find dozens of quotations about the inability to undo from our history what we have said or done. You can't go back and expunge all of that. And those quotes are correct. But what I'm asking you this evening is to be kind enough to explore the idea of if you had a do-over. Second, I'm putting myself in a dangerous position telling you my list of if I coulds. May not be smart to admit what changes I would make if it were possible. Because I know that you could ask, then why didn't you do it earlier? But I know that you would never do that, I hope. Third, truthfully, this is not really just a confessional on my part. Some of what I'm going to mention to you in the next few minutes will be common concerns for most of us. And a few of us may easily be able to say, yes, that is one I would do if I had a do-over. And fourth, these are in no special order. So here's the list. Let me start here. If I could live my life over, I would try to avoid letting anyone get under my skin. I read an interesting quote from a 91-year-old man who had been successful in his earlier life and had achieved things and still possessed a lot of vitality. When asked about his achievements and his outlooks, here was his reply. I have but one skin, and it has served me well, but I refuse to let anyone else get under it. If you've done much yard work, you know what it's like to get a piece of thorn in your finger. May not be a very big piece of thorn, but you know it can cause you considerable pain and seems like it's a lot bigger than just a little piece. You and I know that life has some irritating people. It's easy to let them anger us. But we need to recognize how dangerous anger really is. We struggle sometimes with Paul's words, be angry and do not sin, Ephesians 4:26. A lot of times anger comes to us without our really wanting to get angry. But the question is, when we get angry, what do we do about it? Cain's anger was not handled correctly, and because of it, it led to the murder of his brother and ruined his own life. Much of our life can be spent stewing over slights done to us. Forgive me for remembering, okay? There was a man at Rosenberg who left our congregation because he thought someone didn't speak to him in the foyer. Now, boy, that's a dandy reason for leaving a church, isn't it? He didn't think about all the rest of the people who did speak to him in the foyer. One person didn't speak to him, and that's enough to cause you to leave. Well, I think it'd be much better if we recall Peter's words about Jesus. He wrote, who, when he was reviled, did not revile in return. When he suffered, he did not threaten, but committed himself to him who judges righteously. That's 1 Peter 2:23. Why not leave it to God? Instead of trying to handle that anger yourself in some wrong way, let God be the one who takes care of the problem. That's one. Here's another. If I could live over, I would remind myself frequently how useless it is to worry. The possibilities of worry seem almost endless. Constant world turmoil. Who's going to bomb whom today or tomorrow? Endless political bickering. Health concerns. Family concerns. Money problems. Just go on and on. Maybe some of these have bothered you. If so, it's understandable because no other age has really had worries, right? Wrong. About 2,000 years ago, Jesus addressed the possibilities of worry while he was on the earth. And you could, according to Matthew 6, worry about what you would have to eat, what you would have to drink, or what you would have to wear. 4 times in that chapter, Jesus said, do not worry. Did he mean it? We know he did. And the bad thing is that when we worry, we may be admitting without recognizing it, I don't think God can take care of this problem. I've got to worry over it. J.B. Phillips' translation of Philippians 4 verse 6 goes like this: don't worry over anything whatever. Isn't that what Jesus was saying? Don't worry over anything whatever. Corrie ten Boom was not inspired, but in this case her words ring true. She said, worry does not empty tomorrow of its sorrow, it empties today of its strength. It is the interest we pay on trouble before it comes. 2 down. What else would I do if I could live my life over? I think I would try to be more fully aware of the subtle influences of the world. When you and I hear the word worldliness, we generally mean things like drunkenness, immorality, and some of those things that are listed in the New Testament. But it seems to me that you don't have to be a drunkard or an adulterer to have too much of the world in you. Phillips' translation again, Romans 12 verse 2 begins like this: don't let the world around you squeeze you into its own mold. When I read that translation, it made me think of Isaiah's description of an idol being made. Isaiah 40 verse 19, he says, the workman molds an image, the goldsmith overspreads it with gold. You see, an idol took a while before it became a finished product. It wasn't just the molding, it had to have the gold over it to make it complete. And I'm convinced that people do not become worldly overnight. It's a process. And the influences of worldliness can be very, very subtle. Your neighbors have more than you. Why not be jealous? People treat you badly. Why not return it to them? I know that many Christians are strong enough to resist the temptations of what we think of as the worst sins. But I assure you that if the devil can get us to just blend in with the world, he has succeeded. I remember, and you remember, that Demas went from being a co-worker to being a cop-out because the text says he loved this present world. That love develops over a time, and things become more comfortable to us, even though sometimes they're not good things. Ephesians 6:13 encourages taking up the whole armor of God. And it ends with these words, and having done all to stand. Someone has suggested we may not consider ourselves as outstanding, but we can stand for what's right, and we can stand against what is wrong. The church in our day, as in every era of time, needs to be made up of people who stand for what's right and stand against what's wrong. In order to do that, though, we have to do as Peter urges in 1 Peter 5 and verse 8. Be sober, be vigilant. Watchfulness is necessary to make sure it does not become worldliness. Here's number 4 of if I could live over. I wish I had learned to make a list a long time ago. No, I'm not talking about a list of things to do today or a list of things to buy at the grocery store. I've done plenty of those. I mean a list of people who over the years have influenced my life in a positive way and to whom I owe a debt of gratitude. Some of those are no longer alive, and others are. I hope I was smart enough to thank those who are now dead for what they did for me. But I do know that those who are still alive who have been a blessing to me, I certainly could thank. Such a list would have helped me, I think, to remember to thank God as well as to thank those people. That there have been people through somehow, perhaps even in His providence, who have come into my life and have made me a better person. 1 Thessalonians 1 verse 2 shows Paul's gratitude when he writes, "We give thanks to God always for you all, making mention of you in our prayers." And then to the Philippians, he would add this, "I thank my God upon every remembrance of you, always in every prayer of mine, making request for you all with joy." Can't really say it any better than that, I don't think. I'm always praying for you. I'm praying for all of you. I remember what you've done. You remember that when Paul wrote to Timothy, he mentioned perilous times. And those perilous times were going to come, and one of the characteristics of them would be that people would be unthankful. 2 Timothy 3 verse 2. If we are smart enough to thank people who have enriched our lives, it will not only make us thankful, but hopefully it will motivate us to try to enrich others so that they can be thankful for us. And one of the kindest things that someone could say about you when you're no longer here would be, "I'm thankful I knew that person, and I'm thankful that person was a good influence." Well, what else? Number 5 would be, I would try to learn how to manage stress better. Over the years, many of us have implemented a personal weight reduction program. That's a diet, in case you don't know. But very few of us, I am convinced, have ever tried to implement a personal stress reduction program. One reason that we have not done it in many cases is that there are a lot of stresses, and it's not easy to deal with them. The opportunities to be stressed seem to be so plentiful. Just drive to work in Houston, you'll be stressed. But again, we're not the first people who have had stresses. When you look at Paul's life, and you see that list of sufferings in 2 Corinthians 11, you wonder how anyone could possibly handle that. Then he adds in verse 28 of that chapter his deep concern for all the churches. Not only had he suffered physically, but he was challenged in thinking about the Lord's people. You and I go through nothing like Paul went through in his life, and yet we do have things that stress us. And I'm not just talking about the common things of work and raising a family and other things like that. Some of us are concerned about our grandchildren being able to worship freely in God-honoring congregations. What will their lives be like in the church in the future? Finding a solution to stress is not easy. I recently read about a psychiatrist who never seemed to be troubled at the end of the day. And someone who noted this Ask him, how can you be so full of life after listening to people's problems all day? And he looked at the questioner and said, listen? Who listens? Christians can't justify turning deaf ears to what goes on in the world, what goes on in our family, what goes on in the church. We can't just turn a deaf ear. What we can do is remember to speak the truth ourselves and trust in the power of God's Word and practice what 1 Peter 5 verse 7 teaches, casting all your care upon Him, for He cares for you. List is getting pretty long, isn't it? I have to add this. If I had a do-over, I would spend more time with the Bible. Now, that may sound strange coming from someone who has read the Bible through completely every year for many years. And someone who has studied for Bible classes and sermons for over 60 years. I certainly haven't neglected the Bible. So perhaps what I really should have said was, I would spend more thoughtful time with the Bible. Reading and studying are one thing. Meditating on what you read and what you've studied is something different. Too often, the goal for me, I admit, has been to get through the reading, to finish the class, to finish the sermon. What I should have done is stopped more often and just contemplated the wonder of God's Word. Perhaps we could call this personal devotional time. It is a drawing nearer to God time. Merrill Tenney, the commentator, explained it like this: devotional study is not so much a technique as a spirit. It is the spirit of eagerness which seeks the mind of God. It is the spirit of humility which listens readily to the voice of God. It is the spirit of adoration which rests in the presence of God. We see that kind of spirit in the Psalms. Psalm 119 is a treasure of that kind of thinking, but verse 10 begins, "With my whole heart I have sought you." There are times, listen to me carefully, there are times when it may be best to stop reading and start contemplating about what you've read. If you've ever had the experience of doing Bible reading, and maybe you're on a schedule, I hope you are, and you finish the schedule and then you think just for a moment, what was that I read? What did it have to do with anything? Did I just get through it? Sometimes better to read a little bit with thoughtfulness than a lot with no thought. There's just one more. I know I'm early, don't get scared. If I could do my life over, I would try to look at the words that have been on my desk for more than 60 years. This little picture frame has been on every desk that I've had over all those 6 decades. And it has moved with us multiple times. Every time we moved. And I didn't care what else went on my desk or in my desk. This had to be on my desk. It's really simple. Typed, real old typewriter, on a partial piece of paper with just 5 words. Today will never come again. I have to admit that I haven't looked at it every day. I should have, and I know it would have helped me to look at it every day, because the Bible is abundantly clear of the uncertainty of another day. You remember James in his letter, James 5, would say, "Come now, you who say today or tomorrow, we will go to such and such a city, spend a year there, buy and sell, and make a profit. Whereas you do not know what will happen tomorrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we shall live and do this or do that." Psalm 78 and verse 39 compares our flesh to a breath that passes away and does not come again. The second part of Psalm 90 verse 9 says we finish our years like a sigh. Psalm 144 verse 4 compares our days to a passing shadow. You think God's trying to tell us something? None of us, not one of us here tonight, has a guarantee of one more day. And that's not said to frighten anybody, but let's be realistic about it. And we don't have to be afraid that there's going to be no tomorrow, as long as each day we end the day right with God. And we realize that that day will never come again. If there are people you need to talk to, today may be your only chance. If there are people you need to express your love to, this may be your only chance. Because truthfully, today will never come again. Well, my list of do-overs could continue. I don't know that I should tell you that, but it could. And maybe yours could too. But I hope this is enough for now. Some person given to sarcasm might ask this: what's the point about talking about this? We can't turn back time, and we can't start over. And I would answer that person yes and no. You can't erase history, but you can start over. And if you don't believe that, you need to go back and read Acts 2. Because on that day, 3,000 people started over. They began a new life, a life in Christ, a life forgiven of their sins. There have been millions since then who've done exactly the same thing. And the wonderful, beautiful thing about the gospel is that there is no one beyond its reach as far as God's ability to forgive and to save, if they're only willing to do His will. C.S. Lewis would add this: you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. The encouraging thing for you and me tonight is to know that whatever mistakes we've made, whatever failures that we have endured in our lives, doesn't have to remain that way. God can help you to move on to a better life. Pray with me for just a moment.